financial literacy is not taught in our schools. And if it is, it's usually about investments. It's how to pick stocks or something in that category, or maybe like how to balance your checkbook or something, which I don't think people even do anymore these days, though it's a skill that's important. So yeah, that financial competency space, we're working hard to get into America's hands. And we do some work in Canada as well. And it's so, so valuable because, as we know, money is not everything, but money affects everything that matters to us. And so it's imperative that we get the money game figured out.
Welcome to American Gypsy Podcast. I am your host, Gypsy, and today I have Kim Butler with me. She is a financial strategist, author, podcaster, and alpaca farmer. And we're going to be talking a lot about investment strategies. But first, what's on everybody's mind? How did you get into alpaca farming?
Isn't that the legit question? And it's got an even funnier animal prior to that. So, alpacas came into our lives about 15 to 20 years ago. We had moved to our fourth generation family farm and built a home, wanted to have some legitimacy to the farm. We're casting about for an animal, cows too big, goats, not quite what we wanted. And then we met an alpaca at, I don't remember if it was a fair or someplace. And I mean, these animals look like they're from Disneyland. They're small, they're light on their feet, they have really long necks. So their head's about the same height as a smallish adult. And they are so crazy soft. And I fell in love immediately. And it's not usually a reason to do things, nevertheless. That was just a great addition that we chose to embark on. And they are super cool because you shear them once a year. You do not have to kill them to get their fiber. It's not wool. And we're able to send alpaca scarves to our clients as gifts. So it's a really unique full circle environment where our financial company can purchase the scarves and give them as gifts. And that gives the farm money to do its job and is a fun space.
That's awesome. And where is this located?
Mount Enterprise, Texas. We're north of Houston a couple hours. Okay. And alpacas were way easier to have than milk cows, which is the first animal that I got in fourth grade. And if appropriate, we can talk more about that. But I definitely have a farming background.
That's awesome. Can you give us a little background on your experience in terms of financial markets and how you got into that?
Yeah, so I'll skip the fourth grade part. We can come back to it if you want, and skip ahead to right after college. Actually, even before I graduated, I got an opportunity to do an intern with a friend that lived in San Francisco and worked for a large commercial bank there. Got introduced to that industry, spent 3 years there right after college, loved it. And yet at the same time, because this is before the internet, realized that I wanted to be able to help people more holistically with their personal finances, not just stuck to the products that banks had, because in that era, they basically had checking and savings accounts, mortgages, that kind of thing. So I switched and got all of my licenses. And that's when the stock market came into play. I got a life insurance license, a disability insurance license, the Series 7 license, the Series 65 license. Those are all things around the stock market and financial advising. And I loved that space and worked in it for quite some time. And there's probably some more elements to the story there that may be helpful. So I'll be patient with them. Nevertheless, it was a great, very helpful, very steeped in learning space from when I was 22 to about 28.
So as a new investor, how do I know? Because there's a lot of different investment options, stocks, real estate, bonds, and many more. How do I decide what is right for me and what are some things to consider when I'm making this decision?
So I believe that it is imperative that we separate out the word save, both as a verb and a noun, save the act of putting money away every month, as well as noun, savings, the act of storing cash. We need to separate out that from investments and investing. And I'll go ahead and answer your question around investments and investing, but then we must come back to the beginning because our lives depend on us having cash and liquidity. Cash and liquidity and savings are not investing. So I believe your question was, how do you figure out where you start in the investment world? And my answer is you don't. You do not start in the investment world. You must start with that position of liquidity, savings, cash, your emergency fund. Everybody's heard 3 to 6 months. I believe that's accurate for an employee. It's more like 6 to 12 months if you are a business owner or a all commission person or something like that. But let's talk about the investments for a little bit. Let's pretend that you've got that emergency fund already stored and now you're ready for your next step. You'll want to figure out if you are looking for an investment that you put a little bit of money in every month or an investment that you have a lump sum capability. Maybe let's say you've already stored up 50,000, 100,000, a million, whatever the lump sum is. Well, you want to have an investment that deals with lump sums. That's a completely different approach than the space of a lot of people where it's 500 a month, 1,000 a month. It could be 10,000 a month, but it's a month. And getting clear on those two things first. And then I've got a third and fourth that I want to bring up, but let me just stop. Questions so far?
But no, this is good.
Okay. So once you're clear on whether it's lump sum or monthly, the next question that you want to ask yourself is, am I looking for this investment to grow or to create monthly income? Because those are two different things. They sound similar, but grow is take my $100,000 and turn it into 110,000, or take my $100,000 and turn it into 200,000. That's growth. Income is take my 100,000 and send me $800 a month, or take my 100,000 and send me $700 a month. Whatever the math is, it's a completely different investment, even though they're both lumped together.
I guess that we talked about the savings part. I'm trying to get to how do I get introduced into generating? So we got the savings, taken care of, and you have that extra disposable income. How do I enter into investing into stocks, bonds? How do I decide between the two, or if I should go into real estate? And is it beneficial to focus on one thing or kind of diversify into all of these things?
Excellent question. So you mentioned stocks, bonds, and real estate. And yes, we know there's crypto and a whole bunch of other types of investments. But I think just starting with those first three is a good spot. And you asked a great question using a very specific word that I think is very astute, and that is introduced. How do I get introduced? And that truly is the best way to find good investments, is to get referred or introduced from one friend to another to another. So if you can get clear, again, let's restate, you've got your emergency money handled. Now you're ready. If you can get clear on either growth or income, and then you can get clear on lump sum or monthly, let me separate those out. So let's say that you have a lump sum and you're very clear that you want the money to grow. Excuse me, let me say that again. If you have a lump sum and you're very clear that you want the money to grow, then you're really going to want to be looking at real estate or stocks. If you have a lump sum and you want the money to create monthly income back to yourself, then you want to be looking at bonds. Those are very specific jobs that those very specific investments do. Now, real estate, I mentioned it's for growth. Real estate can also create income. So if you have a lump sum and you feel capable of doing the real estate investing, you have a friend or well-known person that's referred you into the space, then absolutely that can create income as well. And I do believe that seeking cash flow or seeking income is something that we should all be doing at all times of our lives. A lot of people put that way off until this retirement space. I don't think that's wise. Yet, Gypsy, it's so important that people really know themselves before they figure out this stock, bond, real estate, crypto space. So, truly investing in their own education, investing in themselves to make themselves as a human being the best that they can do is really more important and should be done first before the real estate, stock, bond, crypto question is answered. And so, whatever that looks like for you, for some people, investing in yourself might be to take an investment course. For other people, investing in yourself might be to look at your employer's environment and maybe take a course around that, get certified for Google or Microsoft or some other thing that's specific to your industry, because your number one asset is your ability to get up and go to work every day and serve in the way that Father, Mother, God provided for you to serve, the talents that you were given when you were born. And so getting clear on that, especially for the younger crowd or even somebody that's in their 50s and feeling like, they're going to be looking at their next career, because people need to be working until they're 87 these days. The age 65 thing, that was for 1930. In 1930, age 65 was an appropriate age. In the year 2024, if you work the math forward based on longevity, it's age 87. So we need to get into work that we love and be the best that we can at that work. And investing in that is a very important beginning. Now, I want to pause, but I'd like to have another part of our discussion for somebody that's wealthier, that is not asking maybe the initial investing questions, just real briefly so that I can address that. But I'll be quiet for a minute.
No, go ahead. I didn't want to.
Okay. So I think it's super important for somebody that has some substantial capability, whether it's high income or high net worth, that they get very clear if they're an accredited investor or not. Accredited is the word, accredited investor or not. Definition of that is $1 million net worth, not including your home. And that's investable assets. So not including a business or, raw land or anything like that. $1 million net worth. And then either that or a income of 200,000 if they're single, 300,000 if they're married. There's another kind of sub part of that that's called a suitable investor, but not really relevant. You really need to get to that accredited state. If you are not accredited, you have different opportunities that are available for you. Whereas if you are accredited, you have what I would call higher quality, but very hard to find investments. And that's where you really need that introduction to somebody that deals with accredited investors and is capable of taking that higher level investor further down the path. And of course, I have contacts in all these areas. I'm not paid to do this work at all in the space of finding people investments and that kind of thing. But you can't help working in the personal finance space as a financial strategist and not know some people that can help in these areas. So people are welcome to reach out to me. I'm sure we'll give that information later. Nevertheless, it is, I think, very, very important to have your order of operations down and make sure that that emergency fund is clear and funded. By the way, if you're married, you want to check in with your spouse, because some people, they have a magical number like, oh, I have to have 100,000 in my emergency fund, regardless of what 3 to 6 months expenses is, or 6 to 12. Quick story. Oprah Winfrey publicly stated $7 million emergency fund. That's her emergency fund, $7 million. And that was Gosh, that was public maybe 10 years ago. So it's probably a lot higher now. So get that emergency fund solid, and make sure that you're clear on your own capability out in the marketplace, and your work environment is as solid as it can, and then look to invest.
Okay. And for people on either spectrums, what are some tools and resources you would recommend so that they can educate themselves on and make informed decision on their end?
Absolutely. I love asking people how they learn best. Do they want to read? Do they want to watch? Or do they want to listen? And of course, some people have that fourth learning modality, which is they got to get their hands on things. So, of course, I'm biased. I have 11 books on Amazon. So, if people like to read, that's a source. Of course, they're all on Audibles as well. So, if people like to listen, that's a source. I also have over 500 podcast episodes. So, that's a source. And then, of course, I have a YouTube channel. And so, those are all good starting places that Kim Butler is involved with and is out there in the marketplace, actively sharing what works and what doesn't work. Because I've had the blessing of having a nationwide practice literally since the internet began, because of an unusual connection that I had at the time that just created that right away, long before Zoom existed, right? So there's lots there that people can learn from. And I do want to make clear that I teach from a prosperity economics standpoint. And that's different than your typical financial planning. And we can talk about that if it's appropriate. Beyond getting clear on how you learn, there is truly an endless list of resources that I have available based on the subject at hand, because investing is just a huge, huge open bucket that has so many distinct capabilities in it, and different types. And as I've indicated, there's some very important decisions that have to get made before you get into learning about investments. And I really feel that people way too often get the cart before the horse in that space. I would rather have people learn financial competency. And so this includes things like how to deal with interest rates around mortgages, how to deal with credit cards, not credit card debt per se, but credit cards, themselves, and the points that they have available, and how they work, and the dates that matter on credit cards, and that kind of thing. Also, how to navigate all of their benefits at work if they have that type of situation. And if they don't, how they can pick up their own benefits if they're self-employed. Additionally, the entire protection arena. So, car insurance, home insurance, liability umbrellas, which I find that a lot of people are not even familiar with, and are the single easiest and least expensive form of asset protection out there, a liability umbrella. And I'm not a property and casualty licensed agent, but you can get a liability umbrella from your car insurance agent. Usually, sometimes it's your home insurance agent, depending on the state. Nevertheless, these are aspects of financial capability, financial literacy. Sometimes people use, but what I'm really looking for is financial competency.
Yeah, I agree. But it seems like it's a lot to learn just to get started with investing. But I guess that's why people like yourself exist, so they can walk you through that process.
It is very true. And as you're well aware, financial literacy is not taught in our schools. And if it is, it's usually about investments. It's how to pick stocks, or something in that category, or maybe like how to balance your checkbook or something, which I don't think people even do anymore these days, though it's a skill that's important. So yeah, that financial competency space, we're working hard to get into America's hands. And we do some work in Canada as well. And it's so, so valuable because, as we know, money is not everything, but money affects everything that matters to us. And so it's imperative that we get the money game figured out. And so we have a small little commitment, $30 a month course. And it is per month because this is work that you basically need to do for the rest of your life. And then some of our clients upgrade to 97 a month, whereby they can start to learn the elements of financial competency. And what's super fun is we have sections of it that are from age 0 to 5, other sections that are in that 6 to 8 space, and then you've got the like 9 to 13 space, and then the 14 to 18 space. Yet I've got 40-year-old human beings that go through this material and think it's the best thing ever. And so that's something that I would encourage people to take a peek at. It's under our Prosperity Parents brand, and it makes it fun. I mean, it really is amazing what you can do in the financial competency space when you put your mind to it.
Yeah, I definitely wish they taught that in high school at least. I know I've like had to, I was lucky enough, my school offered some like financial education in terms of my high school. So I was interested in it and I was able to take those as electives, but it really should be a required class for everyone.
Agreed. And some of the states are making it that,
Mm,
but I've looked at some of these courses and wow, I guess it's better than nothing, but I don't feel like they have the groundwork that is necessary. I feel like they're putting the cart before the horse again,
mm,
just like you and I are. I mean, the investment space is the sexy stuff to talk about. It's the exciting, it's the sizzle, right? And yet we've got to have that stake. We've got to have that boring, effective material. I mean, just think about when somebody graduates from either high school or college
mm,
there, or moves out of the house the first time, they are right away faced with car insurance, home or renters insurance, and then the ability to deal with cash flow, right? Earning an income and our expenses. And so just right there, there's 5 elements of personal finance that you've got to have some knowledge about, or you just stumble and make mistakes. And it's sad and unnecessary. And so, just at that initial level, there's some learning that can occur. And then you can go forward and, learn the next level and the next level and the next level.
mm. Yeah, I went to during middle school, I went to a private school and they implemented the system to kind of teach the students how to balance checkbooks, what it's like to work and get paychecks. So basically, they gave us all checkbooks, and every day you come to school, you're getting paid. And then at the end of the week, or every 2 weeks, I don't remember, they pay you. And then you wear a uniform, so you can like use the money to gain access, like using the desk in the classrooms, you pay rent, and that's your rent. And then like you can pay for, you know, not to wear a uniform on Fridays or things like that. So that lets you know how to save to gain access to different things that you want to do. So it was a good exercise. I made it fun. You learned how to balance your checkbooks at a very young age. So it's really important to learn all of that from that age.
Agreed. And I'll add that learning how to save first is
Mhm.
the most important skill in all of personal finance. There is a lot of America that is just flat out earning their problem. Their income is high enough that they're fine and they have plenty of cash flow and they can just go forward month after month after month. And we also know that there is a massive percentage, high 95, 6, 7% of America that is not saving as a verb. And it's not the sexy thing to talk about. And if you go interview 5 or 10 financial advisors, they're not going to talk about savings as a verb, even though that's truly the first skill that should be learned. And it needs to be learned when you're 5 years old. But if you skipped that one, then when you're 18 or 25 or 55, right? Then you've got to learn the saving space. And what most people feel is the solution is budgeting. And budgeting does not work beyond a month or two. There's some special exceptions, people that are just really, really dedicated to it. But as a general rule, budgeting does not work because budgeting is looking backwards and then you look back at your expenses, right, over a month or two or 10 or whatever, trying to project that forward into your life. And it might be mathematically correct. You might actually come up, and people do all the time, with a budget that looks correct mathematically. Yet it has nothing to do with your life because life throws you opportunities and emergencies. And that's why I always encourage people to call their emergency money an emergency opportunity fund. Because once you get that first 6 months stored, you don't want to be thinking about emergencies all the time, but you do want to be thinking about opportunities. Well, how do you take advantage of opportunities? You've got to have some extra cash. Now, yes, you can do it monthly. Nevertheless, all the good investments require lump sums. The really, really good investments require 100K minimum. Some of them $250,000 minimum. Some of them $1 million minimum. But setting all that aside, instead of budgeting, if people will save first, the rest of the problem gets solved. And so the way to save first, and for your listeners, if you hear nothing else of my commentary today, the way to save first is to put your paycheck into a savings account and then move money from your savings account into your checking account that you need to live your life exactly as you're living it right now. And so income going into a savings account first, and then only your expense money going into your checking account. Because if you have money in your checking account, it's going to get spent. I don't care what kind of budgeting system you have. And so that savings behavior must be very motivating to you. And it can be motivating and very momentum building if you will have a savings account that you can see building and building and building. Now, we have an app and a special account and et cetera, et cetera. If people are interested in that, they can reach out, but you can do it on your own. You just have to do it. You must not put your check, your paycheck, your income that you earn, however you get paid, because I realize people don't actually get physical paychecks these days, but that income that you earn must not go into your regular checking account that you pay all your bills out of.
Good tip. What are in your experience, what are some mistakes that you see people making and how do you avoid those?
Love it. So obviously getting into credit card debt, too much student loan debt, both drastic mistakes that really, really harm people long-term. Prepaying mortgages. So for people that already have a home or they're purchasing a home and they're looking at a 15-year mortgage, that's a mistake. People would argue with me on that, but I have proof to back it up. I have a book called Busting the Interest Rate Lies, and it goes over this issue very, very thoroughly. But getting a 15-year mortgage is a mistake, and prepaying on a 30-year mortgage is a mistake. So let's say you already have a mortgage, it's 30 years, and you're trying to make extra principal payments or prepaying your mortgages, or sometimes people will use their paycheck cadence and put an extra mortgage payment in every year, or sometimes a little bit every month. However you do it, that is a mistake. Do not prepay mortgages. Also, people live their lives uninsured. So we have car insurance, we have home insurance, yet I just got done saying that our number one asset is our ability to get up and go to work every day. So that means disability insurance and life insurance. People can get that at work, but you're going to want that the rest of your life. And so it's helpful to look outside of your employment benefits for at least life insurance, also possibly disability insurance. Other mistakes I see people make, as we've already talked about, is going straight to investing before they have the savings game handled. And again, savings is a noun as well as savings is a verb, act of putting it away as well as the act of storing it. And then putting too much into retirement accounts. So every other financial person out there talks about maxing out your 401k, MAX. I believe very strongly that whether it's 401k or a 403b, that you should only contribute up to the match level, MATCH. Contributing more than that is a mistake in my mind because it is locking money up until you're 59 and a half. I also believe you possibly in the early years, if you're 22 or 18 and you're just getting started on things, you don't want to contribute to your retirement account at all. That can be done later. And I know the typical advice out there is, oh, start young, so important to build. And it's very important that you build first that emergency money, that liquid money that is available to you. Because what if 2020 happens again? Or what if you have a job opportunity, but it means you will have no income for a year because it's going to be all commission? Or what if you need to move your family across country because of fill in the blank? Those things happen. Having savings and liquidity is imperative. And if you have all of your assets going into retirement accounts that are locked up till you're 59 and a half, the current age that is where those are locked up till, that is not helpful. And so that's a mistake that people make. Those are the biggies. Can you think of others?
No, I'm sure there's plenty. I know we talked about a lot of ways to save. We talked a lot about savings and how important it is. I know some people feel like savings doesn't really do anything, it's just sitting there. I know there's a lot of different ways to save. Are there recommendation or what is your perspective on, using a savings account versus other ways to save?
Excellent question. And it really has two parts, right? It's saving as a verb, the act of actually doing it. And then where do you store the savings? So I'll talk about both. To begin, a savings account at a bank or a credit union is just fine. If you want to do a high yield savings account online, great, have at it. It really doesn't matter. People chase interest rates, and I get clients with having in the course of 1 year 10 or 11 different savings accounts because every month they were moving their account to try to get higher and higher interest rates. Please don't do that. All that's going to do is create a nightmare at tax time because you're going to get 10 different 1099s from all these different financial institutions. Just pick a place and put the money in. The interest that it's earning right now is all low anyway. Maybe it's 3 or 4%, but it really doesn't matter. Whether it's 4% or 3.5 is irrelevant in the big picture, especially for that first 6 months or maybe 12 months of emergency dollars. Now, I do want to address where those dollars could go as a even better place or maybe an additional place, especially once you get into that building of the opportunity fund that we talked to. But before I do that, let me talk about savings as a verb. And I've already stated it, but it bears repeating. And that is you must pay yourself first. You must find a way to save first. Don't try to stick savings at the end of the month. Don't try to stick it at the end of the pay cycle if you're paid twice a month. Don't leave it as an afterthought. It's imperative that it start up front. And the easiest way to do that, as we've already talked about, is stop putting your income in your checking account. I have clients that started as prospects literally 90 to 120 days ago that had no savings and swore they had no ability to save money on a monthly basis. And we started them in our app plus account structure that we have that's by invitation only. And over a period of 90 days, they built up their emergency fund very, very quickly. And now they were decent income earners, but they had never saved a dollar. And all of a sudden they had about $30,000 saved in the course of an extremely short period of time. Don't get caught up on the number of monies saved. It's the method. And so maybe your emergency fund is 5 grand. It's fine, whatever the number is. It is so valuable to have the app plus account structure to build the behavior of driving that momentum and that motivation that us human beings need to get results. So there's that. Now, back to where you store your savings, especially once you get past emergency money and you're working on opportunity money. I always like to introduce people to a centuries old product that's called whole life insurance, WHOLE. Now, for your listeners, before they hang up the phone or get off their device that they're listening to this podcast on, or shut the video screen or whatever it is that they're doing, whole life insurance does have a lot of negative connotations, but it shouldn't. It's been around a couple 100 years, and it works extremely effectively as a liquid opportunity fund. So some people even use it as their emergency fund. Doesn't really matter what, where that 6 months is stored, as I said earlier, but the opportunity fund, which, how high is up? I mean, how big do you want your opportunity fund to be, right? As big as possible. And the older you get, you want it even bigger. And so the storing of an opportunity fund inside a mutual life insurance company, very important. We're talking Guardian, Northwestern Mutual, Mass Mutual, Penn Mutual, One America, Lafayette Mutual Trust. These are the types of companies that are out there that are mutual life insurance companies, and they have a product called Whole Life, not term insurance, which has no value. It's valuable, but it has no value as an asset. Not universal life, not variable life, not index universal life, not any other form of a hybrid of anything, but the very boring, very effective product called Whole Life, WHOLE. And again, if people want to learn, figure out how you learn best, I have a book called Live Your Life Insurance. That's the best learning thing. It's available, of course, on Audibles, and I've got YouTube. If you want to just Google that, you can find it. So Whole Life as a place to store the opportunity fund, liquid cash value, grows without taxes. It grows at the same interest rate that the high yield savings accounts grow today, or I bonds or treasury bills or any of those other spaces where we store liquid money. It's not an investment, because as your opportunity fund, it must be liquid, and liquid and investment do not typically go in the same sentence. You could argue stocks are liquid, but no, they're not, because if your stock account is down, you are not going to sell, nor should you. So that is the space that I recommend people learn about as it relates to storing that savings. And then, as stated, the act of saving is making sure that you're saving first, not budgeting.
I like your tip of putting your paycheck in your savings. It seems like a very simple move. Why do you think it's effective? Because technically you can keep just transferring over and spending it. So why do you think that's effective?
Well, I know it's effective. I've got the statistics to back it up, because it's an action.
Mm.
You're right. You can transfer it all day long, but just that single action forces you to think about it for 2.3 seconds and possibly not do it. Now, in our app, it actually comes up with a message like, are you sure you want to do this? So it forces you to think about it for 4 seconds, but you can still do it. So it's kind of like the candy bar, right? Like when I go to the grocery store, I don't buy candy, because if candy's in my house, I'm going to eat it. And if I do buy it, I make darn sure it's in the cupboard where I cannot see it. It's all it is it's just a tiny little habit that us human beings need help with in order to get results. And it requires action that is just enough far away. It's like the candy bar that's in the drawer or in the cupboard, out of our eyesight. That's the difference.
Yeah. And it probably helps you see the momentum. So you're like, well, I don't want to mess up that momentum that I got going. So let me let me pass on whatever we're gonna buy.
You got it.
Yeah. Well, Kim, this has been such an enlightening conversation. I really appreciate your valuable insights. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with before we close it out?
Yes, you can do it. So if you're young or old and you have basically no savings, you can do it. It's just a few shifts in habit. If you are more experienced, maybe you're an accredited investor and you're looking for the next step, you can do it. You can ask enough people, and I might be one of them. Where should I turn? What else can I be learning so that I can seek this next level of investing? Because I'll be frank, the stock and bond and mutual fund environment is pretty basic. The real estate environment, which everybody's curious about these days, not so much. Nevertheless, there is so much good learning that can occur, and I am available to help people. So I so appreciate being on this podcast, being able to speak with your community members. I have a quiz that might be helpful to people. I have, as I indicated earlier, a couple different levels of a membership, $130 a month for prosperity parents. Our prosperity pledge is $97 a month. You can look at all of that on our Prosperity Thinkers website. We have the special link for your community that I trust will be in the show notes. Mm-hmm. That is prosperitythinkers.com/special/gypsy. We'll make sure you have that link. Awesome. And that has a special document that we created very specifically for your community that is not available anywhere else, called the 7 Phases of Perpetual Wealth. And I really encourage people to grab it.
Awesome. And for the listeners, I'll have all of the links in the description. Thank you, Kim, for coming on. And for the listeners, thank you for listening. Peace.
You're welcome.